David Wise, a three-time Olympic medalist,
my third Olympics in Beijing for halfpipe skiing,
has more to worry about than qualifying for the next games. He's ringing the alarm.
I'm not a climate expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm a professional halfpipe skier. I do have the opportunity to be kind of the canary in the coal mine.
Nearly 2 decades practicing the winter sport, giving him a unique perspective.
Over those 16 years, I've watched the locations we travel to become more and more uncertain of if they're going to be able to pull off an event or not.
He's not the only one who's noticed. The International Olympic Committee, or IOC, recently announcing it's postponing, setting a venue for the 2030 Winter Olympics, citing concerns over climate change and needing to take, quote, more time to study all these factors and opportunities to make the best possible decisions about future hosting. Dr. Daniel Scott of the University of Waterloo took a look at how climate change could impact Winter Games.
Under a high emission scenario where you'd lose almost 2/3 of the climate reliable hosts.
And it's not just about location. It's also about athlete safety.
Even when you have reliable temperatures to make the snow, if your daily temperatures when the competitions are happening are sort of well above freezing, you get those conditions that are really begin to become dangerous for the athletes in all the different snow sports in different ways.
With climate change in mind, the IOC will use a different, quote, more flexible approach to choose host cities, even considering a proposal to require host cities to show average minimum temperatures of below zero over a 10-year period.
Winter is at risk.
Wise joined Protect Our Winters nearly a decade ago with the goal of pushing forward legislation to combat climate change.
I have a voice here that people will listen to when it comes to the topic of snow sports.
Even joining other Olympians at Capitol Hill to lobby lawmakers on the issue. The actions, they say, taken today also impacting the next generations of athletes.
The pipeline of elite athletes to get to the Winter Olympics is shrunk substantially. And so they have some serious concerns about the future of their sport, not just where the Winter Olympics can take place.
Vaughn is joining us now. And Vaughn, it's so interesting because we know that the Olympics, in addition to being sort of a global event, also brings a ton of money to the host city. If there's only a few cities that can actually host the Winter Games, does that mean could become this kind of permanent host city rotation of just a select few?
Right, and that's where you see really these three major cities, including Salt Lake City, that are raising their hands at this point. Salt Lake City at the forefront of saying it would like to do it, and that's where the conversation about could they potentially be one of those permanent stops comes into play. One of the other three cities, though, is in British Columbia, and actually the provincial government there is actually kind of walked away a little bit from its own presentation and its own bid, suggesting the $1.2 billion price tag is a lot for it to take on. And so there's the realities when you're talking about snowmaking, infrastructure building. There's a lot that goes into this at a time in which climate is very much of an issue.
And it's almost like it's a kind of a little bit of a vicious cycle, right? Because to get the Olympics, cities end up building a lot of new stuff that they didn't already have in many instances, right? And then it just kind of sits there in some cases once the games are over.
Right, and you were seeing fewer and fewer bidders. There were just 2 bidders for the Winter Olympics for 2022. Of course, the Winter Olympics were ultimately held earlier this year in Beijing, and it was nearly 100% of the snow was man-made. And those are some of the realities. You're talking about water infrastructure too, Hallie, because then there's questions about where does that water come from. Of course, if you're talking about the American West, that is no small conversation to be had, and that is where you see this conversation really not only about 2030 and 2034, but also about the future. There was a study done when looking at the past 21 winter host cities, Hallie, and of the 21 host cities, you're looking at an average increase of about 10 degrees Fahrenheit over the last century in those 21 cities. This is a conversation that is going to be had for decades to come.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.